The Egyptian military leadership since the 1952 revolution has seen itself as the ultimate guarantor of stability in Egypt. And over the last year, in particular, I think the generals in the ruling military council have felt that they were all that stood between Egypt and chaos. When the time came this week for them to step forward and begin to hand over the reins to a democratically elected president, they found that they simply could not tolerate it. And so, yes, this has very worrisome implications for the prospects for real democracy in Egypt. As it is, if there was indeed any progress toward a democratic transition over the past year, that progress has now been halted and reversed. There's no doubt that the crisis right now over the authorities that the military council has given itself will cause further instability in Egypt. First of all, because there is a confrontation now between the political forces that ran in these elections and the military. But it's a deeper crisis than that. Egypt's economy has been suffering ever since the revolution. Without an elected parliament, without a president with real authority, economic policy decisions will be very difficult to make. The IMF, which had been thinking about a deal with Egypt to help support its economy, is not going to make that deal unless it has wide political consensus, which is impossible in these circumstances. Investors are going to stay away while things are so uncertain and chaotic. Tourists will stay away. And so Egypt will suffer continued economic instability. One of the interesting aspects of Egypt's politics over the last year is the emergence into formal politics of the Salafi movement. These are extremely conservative Islamists who decided to join the electoral process and did fairly well in the parliamentary elections. But if the democratic process now is stalled or overturned by these military decrees, some of those extra conservative elements may decide that politics doesn't have anything to offer them. And the real tragedy would be if Egypt saw again the rise of extremist Islamist terrorism like it saw in the 1980s and 90s. During the period since the revolution, the U.S.-Egyptian relationship has been premised on assurances by the ruling military council that they were shepherding a transition to democracy. Their actions over the last week have thrown those assurances into question. And it now looks as though they're interested in holding on to power for themselves. And this is what's very troubling to the Pentagon and to the State Department. Although U.S.-Egyptian military cooperation is very valuable to both parties, it's hard to see how these actions will help stability in Egypt. And that's what the U.S. really wants to see. They want to see stability, and they believe that stability will come through democratic change. So the relationship, I think, is going to be in crisis unless the military can establish a clear roadmap back toward democratic transition.